What's going on, guys? It's Cimoooooooo. So today we're posing the question, should you buy Battles of Legend Relentless Revenge? Today we just got the full spoiler for the entire set, and so I wanted to go ahead and reveal that to you guys, but also discuss some of the pros and cons in comparison to Battles of Legends Light Revenge to help you guys make the decision as to whether or not you want to invest in this set. But before we get into that, I want to give a huge shout out to my newest patrons as always. So big shout outs today to Trevor. You are the reason that this channel is growing strong. And if you guys want to help support me in the channel through Patreon, then check out the Patreon link in the description below. But without further ado, let's go ahead and get right into it. So before we talk about Relentless Revenge, I want to touch back on Light's Revenge and discuss what made the set so successful, because a lot of people revere Battles of Legends Light's Revenge as being one of the greatest sets in the entire history of Yu-Gi-Oh! So what contributed to that? Well, I think there's three main factors that did. The first being that the secret rare cards that were printed in this set were some of the best possible reprints they could have ever given to us pretty much of all time. These are cards that were anywhere from like $20 to $30 in some instances, and just one after another they were just handing them to us, and it was amazing. Cards like Artifact Sanctum, Trishula, Denko Sekka, I mean I could just keep going on and on. Very good, competitive, just powerhouse cards that anyone would love to get their hands on. Cyframe Lord Omega to this day is still probably the most expensive card to come out of that set. The second thing that contributed to that is the ultra rare slots were actually a lot of very mid-value cards ranging between anywhere from like $8 to $15, and while they might not have been the most competitively relevant, they were cards that pretty much had a high price point for no reason, and they reprinted them to pretty much bring the price of those cards down. Now, depending on the format, these reprints might be relevant, but there were some cards in there that actually were really good. I mean, Anti-Spell Fragrance is probably the most notorious and one of the most popular, especially at the time. Cards like Different Dimension Ground, there was Deviati, Into the Void, there's Spellbook Magician of Prophecy, Spellbook of Secrets, just one after another. Cards that were extremely expensive had yet to have a reprint, and that's what they gave to us in this set. And the last thing is the fact that Minerva was a prize card and had its first ever reprint in Light's Revenge. I think that's what got people really excited, because Minerva was a card that essentially prevented a lot of people from playing a very solid tier 2-ish deck at the time and being able to compete with it. And yeah, you know, it wasn't the best deck, but basically being able to play a deck at full power and not having that paywall for having to pay for a prize card was kind of just the, you know, the bow that wrapped the entire package together. Now fast forward a year later to Relentless Revenge, and does Relentless Revenge live up to that same hype? Well, starting off with the secret rares. Now, one of the biggest differences between Relentless Revenge and Light's Revenge is that Light's Revenge had only 80 cards. There were 20 secret rares and 60 ultra rares. Well, Relentless Revenge decided to up the secret rare count from 20 to 40, and that's a pretty big jump. I mean, that's literally doubling the amount of secret rares that are going to be in this set. Well, if there's going to be a lot of good reprints in there, then I guess it could be worth it. So, did it live up to that expectation? I don't really think so. When you look back at Light's Revenge, I would say there's probably about 10 to 12 secret rares out of the 20 that were very high in demand reprints of very expensive competitive cards. When you look at Relentless Revenge though, at least for me personally, I feel like there's only like 10 to 12 out of the 40, and that's a really stark difference in comparison, considering they doubled the number of secret rares that are going to be in this set. So why does that realistically matter? Well, if you think about it, by just clogging the set with bulk secret rares that are cards that really people don't want, especially since this series of sets has established itself as a very high value reprint set, you're kind of bringing down the entire value of the set as a whole. I mean, if you're going from 20 secret rares and half of them are good to 40 secret rares but only a quarter of them are good, that really just kind of brings everything down, and then every pack that gets opened, every box that gets ripped up, there's going to be a much higher rate of, people not being satisfied with the cards that they get because you're not getting the cards that are going to be as good. Now, sure, there are some very good powerhouse secret rares here. You've got Trickstar Reincarnation, which was like $40 before the announcement of the reprint. Dragonic Diagram, which was like $25 and a very solid tier 2 contender at the moment. You've got stuff like Brilliant Fusion. There's really good secret rares in here for the 10 that I consider to be good, but the other ones I really just don't like at all, and I don't really feel that they fit thematically with Relentless Revenge as a whole. And when we're talking about reducing the value of the set by just clogging it with bulk cards, one of the big issues is, do these cards need to even be in here in the first place? Because when you get to the ultra rares as well, this is going to be something that becomes very problematic. I mean, when you look at a card like Foolish Burial Goods that happens to be getting another reprint, this is just getting outrageous because Foolish Burial Goods had received a reprint back in April in the Lair of Darkness structure deck. It received a reprint last month in Dark Saviors as a super rare, and now you're telling me it's going to get a third reprint over the time span of 2 months as an ultra rare. That's fucking ridiculous. Why does this card need to be in here? Were the first reprints not enough? Not to mention it has an initial printing in its original set, and it was printed again in the Mega Tins last year. Why the fuck is this card in here? This could have been a slot that they could have just cut altogether, but it's also a card that could have been taking up the slot of something that deserves to have a reprint and could have been something that a lot of people would have been looking forward to. So this is just fucking lazy in my honest opinion. But it doesn't really stop there, because when you look at some of the other cards that are clogging up this set, you've got stuff like the Phantom Knights and the Noble Knights and the Neospatians, and yes, I understand that by including these cards in here, they're trying to have a transition point into their other products that they're going to be releasing a little bit later on, namely the Mega Tins for Neospatians, the Legendary Hero decks for the Phantom Knights, and Cybernetic Horizon for the Noble Knights. But again, that brings up the issue of they're going to be reprinting these cards anyway. Take the Phantom Knights, for instance. The Phantom Knights are going to be reprinted in the Legendary Heroes deck. So if they're going to be reprinted in only a couple months anyway, why do they need to be in this set? Now, to be fair, Fogblade and Ancient Cloak were reaching ridiculous prices for no reason just because they haven't had a reprint since its initial set. But they're going to be reprinted anyway, so it's going to bring the price down at some point. So by printing them again in this set, it's not really doing anyone a favor. Sure, I guess you can get a secret rare version of them, but besides that, that's really the only value that having them in here really adds. Same thing goes for like the Noble Knights. Yeah, sure, Brothers and Medrot were the two most expensive Noble Knight cards, but realistically they weren't that expensive to begin with in the first place. I guess Brothers kind of fits the category of what this set is supposed to do, but again, is that really worth having these slots? I don't really know. I would say that's up for debate. And the Neospatians, like, yes, I understand the Neospatians are going to be reprinted in the, the Megatin is basically going to be Neospatian themed. But the issue there is that these cards have been printed several times over, and unless you're trying to get the ultimate rare first editions from their first sets, these cards are not that expensive. And as we've already established, I feel that Light's Revenge and Relentless Revenge is basically trying to print medium value cards at a much cheaper rate to make them more widely accessible. So the Neospatians in this instance, yes, while it thematically makes sense to segue into another product, it's taking up slots of other cards that could have made sense being reprinted that didn't make the cut. Now, moving on to the ultra rares specifically, I want to talk about this because one of the big appeals of Light's Revenge was that there were so many powerful ultra rares that were getting reprinted. I mean, Anti-Spell Fragrance to this day is probably still one of the most expensive ultra rares out of Light's Revenge and still sees play because it's that strong of a card. But you also had just very good generic cards that, even though they might not be good at the moment or maybe for one particular deck, they're good and generic enough that they could be applied across the board. Take, for instance, Spellbook Magician of Prophecy and Spellbook of Secrets. These are two ultras from Light's Revenge that, you know, they work in Paleozoic as a draw engine, or even Dark Magician as a draw engine, but it doesn't apply to everything, but it helps kind of bolster those decks and bring them more into the competitive forefront by reducing the price of those cards, because before that, they never had a reprint, and their price was rather excessive for what they were. So they got a reprint in Light's Revenge, and now each copy is about maybe $1 or $2 at most. I don't feel that Relentless Revenge took the same approach here. When it comes to Relentless Revenge, rather than taking mid to high value cards that are in like the $8 to $15 range and bringing the price down, they took cards that are in like the common and the rare slot that sure see some competitive play, but they kind of just made them a higher rarity just to kind of make people happy with that. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. I think people are always happy when cards get rarity bumped, but I don't feel that's what this product is for. To me, that makes more sense for an OTS pack. You know, when I tell you that cards like Eater of Millions, Psyframe Driver, Unizombie, Perform Age Trick Clown, these are all cards that realistically could have been super rares in an OTS pack, and that makes more sense because the OTS pack takes competitive staples and upgrades their rarities. That's kind of what that set is known for. Relentless Revenge, again, as we already established, is more for reprinting mid to high level cards and bringing the value of them down, making them more widely available to the player base. So while it's nice to have the shiny cardboard, I don't think it necessarily fits the role of the set entirely. Sure, we've got cards in the ultra rare slot like TG Wonder Magician, which will be relevant once we get Crystron Needle Fiber in the coming months at some point, and Solemn Strike, which even though it's had several printings, is still at about $8 to $10 a copy. I think those are pretty good, but beyond those two cards, there aren't really a lot in the ultra rare slot that this set has going for it. And that brings us to my last point. You know, this set does not have a chase card like Light's Revenge did. Minerva is kind of what was just the cherry on the sundae that made Light's Revenge such an incredible set. Sure, you could argue that Trickstar Reincarnation is the chase card of the set because, you know, it was a $40 card before the reprint was announced and had to be played in the best deck of the format. But there isn't something like another prize card. You know, Ascension Sky Dragon is going to be in the Legendary Hero decks of all things, and it's not going to be in this. Thematically, it makes sense that because they printed a prize card in Light's Revenge, they would print it in this set, but they decided to forego that and put it in the legendary decks instead. Why they did that, I don't know, but I think it kind of just really takes away from what we came to expect when it comes to these Battles of Legends sets, and I think it really takes away from the overall value of the set as a whole. When you look back at Light's Revenge now, a year later, the prices have come down a lot. Sure, you've still got cards like Psyframe Lord Omega, a few of the secret rares, and also cards like Anti-Spell Fragrance still holding a pretty price tag just because of how relevant they still are in the competitive format. But the thing you have to realize is a majority of these cards have become, you know, maybe $1, maybe $2 at most, and I think that shows that this set did its job. Relentless Revenge is going to follow suit, but I feel it's going to hit even harder because since the set is full of so much more bulk by comparison, it's going to bring the value of the set down entirely, which means that the cards are going to be even more easy to acquire on the secondary market because people have to rip open more of the set just to get the cards that they want because there's so many extra secret rares that people aren't exactly excited about. So if you're a competitive player looking for cards like Dragonic Diagram, Trickstar Reincarnation, that's great, but just wait a few weeks and just buy the singles because the prices are going to come crashing down once these cards start entering the market in a healthy supply. And even if you're a player who's looking at the low value cards, the Neospatians, the Time Lords, the cards that aren't exactly being eyed in terms of their high value, that's perfectly okay too, and you're in the best position because if you wait a couple weeks and start buying singles on the secondary market, you're going to be able to get all the cards that you want for just the price price of maybe a couple packs if you were to buy sealed product. Ultimately, if you're a cardboard fiend and you just love cracking open product, I'm not going to be able to stop you, but I personally believe that if you want to go and be as cost effective as possible when it comes to this game, because a lot of people really are playing on a budget, save your money, buy the singles once the set enters the marketplace. But guys, those are just my thoughts. Let me know down in the comments what you guys think about Relentless Revenge as a whole. I'd really love to hear your thoughts. Guys, thank you so much for watching the video. Be sure to like the video as always. Subscribe to the channel for more amazing Yu-Gi-Oh content. And if I helped save you money from this video, consider backing me on Patreon, because just by pledging only $1 a month, you're investing in my ability to continue bringing you amazing Yu-Gi-Oh content. So thanks so much again, and we'll see you next time.